Okay, this is the old school where when I was 6 years old, I started here. The first classroom was down here, and the second was up there in the middle there. These two, and this was the third, and this was the fourth. So I had four classes till the elementary school. And the first day, my mother brought me on her bicycle on the back seat. She brought me here, and I was standing here in this hall all by myself. There was nobody there, and
because you came so early.
Because I was earlier, I had to wait because the classroom did not open until it was time. And so I remember standing there the first time in my life, 6-year-old, all by myself. And it was scary a little bit, and still looking forward to it seems a lifetime of school. So, Altes Schulhaus, this is what it was called, always. And we walked, 2 kilometers I had to walk back and forth.
It's great. It's great. Bahnhofstraße that we're going up now, the route from the downtown center up to Papa's house that he used to go all the time, every day. This is the approach up the hill. On the left, Fröhlich's right there, the store. This is the guy's house, the neighbors. And here we come on Bahnhofstraße, 81.
This is where I was living for my 4th year on until I was 30 years old. And Bahnhofstraße 81. And this front with the 2 windows on this side and that was my room, and that the other one with the window going into the garden, towards the garden, this was the living room. And up there, we originally had rent out, and later I lived up there. I lived in this room there, which is behind the tree.
On the left.
On the left. And here at the bottom, the other window, this is the kitchen. And up there's a terrace and another kitchen right over the other one. There's a kitchen. So the house has 3 rooms and a kitchen and a bathroom and a toilet. And this is the only thing which is really still authentic, I think, namely that lovely pear tree, Weinbirnen. It's not for eating purposes, it's for making cider and stuff like that.
And also
we had a white picket fence around. There was a door with picket fence
A gate.
around a gate, and we didn't have this little roof over the door. There was some other. There was a stone plate, a stone cover on top of it, which came straight out.
And what else
And
is
we
missing
didn't
from the
have
house?
this in the back. There was not. There was the chicken court, yard, chicken yard, and the chicken can go down the forest. This is a forested slope, and underneath there are meadows, and then comes the ends. So they went sometimes down even to the near the ends. And these were the Wagners. These were the Scheifeles. Wagner, Scheifele, Eweiler, Boy. These were our neighbors. And these here are the guys. And this is about the same house as this here. And we were the ones who moved into this when it was in a real unfinished state. There was no stucco on. There was no picket fence on. There were even all the shutters, which are now missing anyway, were not on.
The green shutters. That
Green
really
shutters, which made it very charming. Yes. And
in the back there are the cherry trees that Dante carried in on his
that's
back
correct. That's
and
correct.
planted himself. Maybe we could go.
Let's take a look here. It seems still to be surviving, or I don't know. It's a different one. And we had here more flowers, no pine trees.
And we
But this came much lower down. So the lower windows were also pretty much behind that leaf cover. But still the same Ziegel, the same tiles on the roof is still bought from that time. And we had the different ones, as you see. They're called Biberschwanz called. And ours are Falzziegel called.
And from the terrace, we used to pick the cherries and spit the cherry pits down into the forest.
That's right. That's correct. Bahnhofstraße 81. For 26 years I lived here.
Yes.
Window to the left of the front door is a bedroom.
So okay, all the way back, it's kitchen, then toilet, then the hall, and the stairs, and then another bedroom. Is that on the right? The same window, same bedroom as this one in the front? Is that
on the left? That's the living room.
now? Who stayed? And now Pop said he had this bedroom on the left.
Yeah. Well, of course it changed, but we didn't know it.
When you were here, where would you stay?
Different times, different rooms. Depending on how much the house was.
Would it hang closer to the house or something?
No.
Okay, stop. This is the house I was born in on March 2nd, 1930. And my parents, coming both from Bissingen, rented the other floor there. These were 3 rooms and a kitchen typically, and a shared toilet. There was no bathroom as you know it now. And the people in the owners were the eldest. Elbe, and they had one daughter, Irma. She was about 6 years older than I was, or maybe 8 years older. And she still lives here. And in those days, this here was all meadow here. That was the last house. There were only two houses. This house and there were the Doubts, which was a building company. There were only two single houses down here. The rest was meadows. Here the river, no bridge here, absolutely nothing. This was the end. Here was a barn stand, a big field barn called. And of course the Mühle. Is a flour mill, the Rommel Mühle, and this burned in 1929. It started to burn, and burned right in the middle through the two halves almost. And as you can imagine, the sparks would come over here, and my mother being, ready to, for birth within more than 3 weeks. She would get everything ready into some container just for me, the necessary things. Anyway, my parents came down here because my father found work in Bissingen, and coming from Enzweigen with a bicycle, all this way was very time consuming. So we lived for a time with my aunt, his sister, and just in rent, in the room you stayed right now. This was his room. And so we wanted to rent something nearby, closer by to Bietigheim, and this is where he went. And he rented this before he got married in me because my mother would always postpone the wedding a little bit because she felt responsibilities towards her uncle in Bissingen and her aunt helping out there in the household. Anyway, they came one day down here on a Sunday, walked from Enzweigen up to here 2.5 hours and they didn't talk or work with each other because at that time this was the first family disagreement. And because my mother didn't want to have the wedding set, and he said, I have already rented this place and we have to see it, and so on and so on. And so they came here, they talked here with the owners, and the owners later said they were very astonished how little these people talked and so on. And from then on, they walked back the same day, of course. And again I talked. And this is a funny story which was told many times, and from here in 1934, I was born in 1930.
And how were you named?
I was named Rolf, of course, but there was another disagreement. My mother wanted a Werner, and my father wanted a Walter. Here nearby was a Walter, a boy who he very much liked, so he wanted a Walter. She wanted a Werner, and he didn't like this, and she didn't like the other. And then she said, well, he would like to be called Albert, because this is her father's name. And he said, well, then he must also be called Jakob, because his father was Jakob. And so he didn't agree on this either. So he went to the city hall, this hall which we saw the other day, this old rathaus, and there he went up the steps at the outside. And when he walked up there, he said, I had not the slightest idea what the name would be. And so he appeared in front of the mayor, and he said, now, congratulations and all that. And now, Mr. Roman, what is the boy's name? And he said, Wolf. And so, no other name, because he had difficulties with the first one. And this was a very modern name in those days. It seemed, because I had school friends with that name. Whereas before we didn't give this name. Anyway, when he came back, my mother asked now what did you call him? What did you name him? And he said, Wolf. And she said, August, how can you? We haven't talked at all about Rolf, as a choice. And I said, well, that's it, no change. So this is how it was. And then in 1934, we moved up there, which was closer by to where he worked. His house was sold in a rather unfinished state, but we had to do a lot of work in that house to that it got finished. Anyway, my grandfather, Albert Schneider, had it turned into this apartment.
Great. Good.
Other houses, just this and the other one. And here I was working with this. My landlord. I was working here, turning around the grounds,
Loosening up, yeah.
shoring. And I was working so hard. He was always wiping his forehead because he was perspiring so much, and I thought I should also perspire, and I didn't. I just got a hot hit, a red head, and I said, how do you manage to get that perspiration? He said, by working hard, so working harder, and so on, and I just didn't succeed. But finally, over the years, I developed really inclination of getting sweating, and I felt later sorry that I was so eager to perspire because it was too much most of the time.
You make up for it now for the time.
Yes,
Say what it is or not?
a little bit of maybe of the ends. I think it would be nice
to walk along it, maybe.
to walk across that bridge and look down. A photograph. My mother was going down there, just getting a little bit in the river and taking a bath. And my mother came up here to the river meadow, and my father had the photo apparat in his hands, and I was going with him. And as she came up there, she had her not a tube, she had over her head and apron on and so on, and was not the attire was not really appropriate as she thought. But she would say, don't dare to do this. And he snapped the picture anyway, so he stands there, in the middle here of that meadow.
That's great.
Don't dare. Now this is my river here. Really, the ends. I'm very emotionally attached to this river. So it comes from the Schwarzwald, the Black Forest, down here, and basically it goes into the Neckar. And it is now very slowly flowing, but it can be really in springtime after the big rains. It can really be very fast flowing and overflowing. So all these valleys are sometimes at the border. And it came in after the house. And in the house they could finding their parrots and stuff like that, which were stored there. And I think the parrots were floating in the water, in the cellar, because the cellar is deeper.
Below ground.
And so in a kind of bathtub, they would, using it as a boat, they would go from one end to the other to secure some of the things which were floating around. So my mother told me this, I didn't see it.
And you used to be able to swim in here all the time.
Yes, yeah. Here it is not very deep, but up there, about a few hundred meters up there, there was a dam across the river to get the water into the mill. There was a dam in there, and behind that, the water was at least 3 meters. That means 10 feet or so high. And we had some kind of a public bath. What do we call it? It was a public bath which was hanging and floating on the river, and this is where I went swimming in those days. And of course, people who could swim, they would go outside the river, and I was always in my younger years swimming upstream at night at moonshine, typically 1 kilometer to the barrel, then I would turn around and swim down.
Which was
it was
easier.
so peaceful. It was very, very peaceful and a little maybe scary because everything was dark, really.
All the trees.
Yes. There could be maybe a water rat which just go in front of you,
Right.
over from one side to the other. Yes, what you see there was not really there. There was only meadows all the way down.
It's called the Wiesental.
Wiesental, yes.
And this is where you would always go walking.
Yeah, we walked there. Yes.
And Dada would go with Aras, and this is where they always went walking.
Yes.
All along the ends, right?
Yeah, all along the ends. It's further down a little bit.
And how long did it take? Just past Bissingen.
She is the prettiest girl, and my father kept this in mind, and sometime later we had a chance to out her with a flat tire out on the bridge there towards Spain, and proposed to suggested that this we could go out and this is how the whole thing started.
Oh, so I can get the Lerchenholz sign. Okay.